Hello everybody, and welcome to another Tools of the Trade video. In our last video, we went over the inks that I use when I do any kind of ink work. Let me put a little black magic here on the palette. And right now I want to go over some of the brushes and pens that I use. So to start with, what I look for in a brush, especially for doing fine ink drawing, is a nice thin tip that remains or retains its shape. Now that means it's got to have that nice fine point on it, and even after multiple uses it should keep that. This right here is a Winsor & Newton Cotman Series 111 round brush. It's size 00. Now I have sizes from 0 all the way to quadruple 0. The more zeros, the smaller it gets. These are great brushes, although like with anything in life that you're using a ton of, eventually they're going to get a little funky. As you can see on this brush, or at least I hope you can, the 000, the tip has frayed out a lot. This needs to be replaced. Luckily these brushes are relatively inexpensive, coming in at like I'd say between $5 and $7. A lot of people swear by more expensive brushes. However, I find that no matter how expensive the brush, the same problem always occurs for me. So I'd rather just get these, use them for, and they last, I would say, at least maybe a year or so if you're taking care of them. And that means putting the little plastic cappies on them when they're not in use and washing them thoroughly when you're done with them. This right here is a watercolor Kolinsky sable, again by Winsor & Newton. It's got a great shape on the handle, as you can see. Very easy to hold. It's nice. The tip is good. It's a 00, so it's the same brush tip as our other 00 here. But Kolinsky sable, they say, is one of the finest for inking. It retains its shape well. I unfortunately spent the money on this brush to try it out, and that did not happen. I found that the tip of it frayed out almost immediately. It has trouble retaining a shape. The bristles are a little uneven at the tip, which is no good for me. I don't know if this brush itself is a fluke or if that's how it works, but yeah, so you know, a lot of people say spend a lot of money and get the best stuff you can get, and I did on this. This was like 20 bucks, and I really don't like the way the tip goes. It draws nice and smooth, that's for sure, but I find it doesn't hold a lot of ink, and it just kind of like starts to fray out and smear. It's very odd. So yeah, it goes to show you that you got to try a lot of different things and find what works best for you, and don't just go with people say, oh, use a Kolinsky sable, it's the best. You got to experiment for yourself. These guys here, Princeton Elites, are a lot of the same. They have a shape that I find pleasing to hold. They come in the similar brush sizes. These are around the same range, I'd say, price range and everything, as the blue Cotmans. However, these guys were great at first, but unlike the Cotmans, I found that they started to fray and get funky a lot sooner, I guess. It was only a couple of months before I started to go, oh, these need to be replaced or changed out or whatever. So I wouldn't get these again, I don't think, but it's good to experiment and try. Hopefully you guys can see, but the strokes that it gives don't have that really nice, crisp, fine line. They're kind of bubbly. It's almost like producing the Comic Sans font of brush strokes, which I'm not a huge fan of. So they were a good experiment, and they worked for a while, which is good. I have a very cheapo brush here. This just says China on it, so I have no idea where it was manufactured, but it's, I think I got this one at like the dollar store, and it's just a big, thick, flat brush at the tip. It's really good for adding in areas where I don't need a fine line, I don't need a lot of control, I just need to like lay down some ink. So to that end, that's what this guy does. It just just puts down big old chunks of ink. It's good to have a couple brushes like this. You don't have to spend a ton of money on it. In fact, I definitely didn't on this, but just something that you can lay down these big spot blacks on and stuff. Good to have in your collection, good to use. Get used to using stuff like this because I think it definitely helps. With these tiny fine line brushes, if you're going and trying to fill in large sections, you're going to be sitting there forever. Your brushes are going to wear out faster, and that's no good. Nobody likes that. Next up on the brush department, and this is the last one I'll show you for now. This is actually a liner brush. This is used for like acrylic painting or whatever, and as you can see, it's got this humongous bristle tip on it, and that's for doing these really long strokes with like acrylic paints and the like. This brush is pretty new, so it's a little stiff. I need to use it a little more, but these are good to have just in case you need to make these like really long lines. It fills up with a lot of ink, which is awesome. You just dip it in and the ink goes like up, and you can use this one for a while, make some nice long lines with it. And I really like that without having to re-dip constantly. This is definitely, like all these brushes, are finesse tools. You don't want to be hitting this hard. You just want to kind of nice strokes, drag. And that's one of the things that I would do when I first started inking, is fill up pages of just brush strokes, tiny, tiny brush strokes, long brush strokes, wavy lines, thick, thin, stuff like that. It's good practice, and it might be a little boring, but it's something you got to do just to get used to the feel of all these tools. All right, let's move into pens here real quick. And I'm going to first show you this just to show it to you. But this is a case of crow quill pens, they're called. Now, they're not made of crow quills. These are made of metal and steel and stuff. And once again, these are relatively inexpensive. You can buy real high-end stuff. Two different handle styles for either the smaller brushes or the bigger brushes. These are like your typical, like if you're some, I don't know, frou-frou French nobleman penning his memoirs before the guillotine, you know, you can imagine a guy like that using this. Used for calligraphy a lot. I find they're hard to use and they don't produce lines I like, but if you want ultra thin lines, this can be the way to go. Additionally, if you're using doing calligraphy, this is like the perfect kind of thing. Like I said, they're a little hard to use. I don't use them a lot. And if you use them incorrectly, they're so sharp they'll tear the paper. So if you're just noodling around and decide to go, oh, I'm going to go in this direction, you could end up ripping your hard-earned drawn piece of artwork. So I don't tend to use them a lot. I do have the different nibs because, like I said, you should try out a lot of this stuff. Maybe these pens are what you want. Maybe you get into this and you say, I love this. I absolutely love using this. Then use it. Then do it. That's great. Some of the bigger sizes have different tips used for different things. They can do weird lines, big lines, stuff like that. But you're going to have to practice and play around with these a lot to get any kind of effective use out of them. So be cautious, but you know, grab a set for a few bucks and give it a try. You know, learning never hurt anybody. All right, last but not least, let's get into the pens that I use. These technical pens here are the Copic multi-liners. They're made for use with the Copic marker system, which is great because they dry very fast and you can color with Copics over them without a harm of smearing. They go from a size 0.03 millimeters to 1 millimeter in thickness, and they give a very even line. A lot of times when inking, you want to vary your line widths. The 1 millimeter, as you could see, it's a very thick, very consistent line. You can vary the pressure up, but I mean, you're not going to get a ton of variety out of these. Very good for small technical details and drawings like that, backgrounds and stuff. I love these guys for a lot of reasons. And if you don't see the Copic multi-liners, don't think you have to go nuts. You can get the Micron pens. They sell just about anywhere. These are probably even more available than the Copics, and they come in all sorts of different line widths from 0.05 millimeter, nice super thin line, all the way up to an 8, Here's a 3, just to give you an idea. It's just a little bit bigger. Good stuff, very affordable. I would recommend picking up a brush as well. This has a brush tip on it, plenty of ink in there. You could get that nice line widths and stuff like that. This may be an even better solution than starting in with the pens, the brushes and pure ink, just to get a feel for like what drawing with a brush is like without the investment of having to buy a palette and water and clean up and all that. So the brush micron, I highly recommend picking one of these guys up. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope I gave you a nice overview of pens and brushes utilized. Once again, this is Tools of the Trade, and join me for the next video. Thanks guys, and we'll see ya.